Good morning, everyone. My guest today is helping companies shorten the time it takes to bring pharmaceutical drugs to the market. She's now in 2 years in building her startup. Please welcome the co-founder and chief scientific officer of Biorce, Clara Bernardes.
Thank you so much, Mil, and thank you for the effort of actually pronouncing my last name very correctly. So congrats on that as well, and thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So glad to have somebody joining us from Spain too. You're in Barcelona, I'm in Valencia. And could you give us a little bit of insight about what you do at Biorce to give our listeners a bit of an overview?
Of course. So at Biorce, like you said, we're almost 2 years old. We'll be 2 years in January. Currently, what we do is we have a harmonized platform, AI based, to solve all the pain points in the pharmaceutical industry. We focus mainly on study startup. So we will only work on focus on the clinical side. So no preclinical, no little white mice in labs, and no post market. So yeah, that's what we do, trying to essentially decrease not only the timelines but also the costs, because the less it costs to a pharma to get a drug, a treatment, a device out there to the patients, the less will cost also to the patients to access it.
And just to kind of give a general understanding of the real pain and the extent of that pain on the real market. Can you, because I know a lot of people listening to this, they might not know the intricacies of how long it takes to get a drug out, how much testing there is, the stages that are implied. Could you tell us in general about how many years it usually takes, how much money should be spent to get a product out there, FDA approved and everything, to have it on the market?
Yeah. So currently it takes around 11 years, more or less one, depending on the type of indication, meaning the type of medical area where you're doing your research. Cost-wise, it's in the dozens of millions. It will depend, obviously, if you're a smaller company like a biotech, or if you're a big company like a big pharma, like the ones we all know and got to know more and more from COVID, with all the vax situation. But it's definitely in the dozens of millions, and it takes 11 years, which is a long time. And our goal is to decrease that to a maximum of 5 to 6.
So currently, it's almost impossible for somebody new to join the market and have enough runway for the next 10 years. It's basically like you have an idea, you have a concept, and you have a lab that kind of like, oh, we found this really cool idea, substance that could help with that thing. And that takes 10 years until you're able to make money of selling it on the
Yeah.
general market.
Don't forget that after you apply, you actually only have 20 years of patent to use it. So if you take 11, that means that you will only actually be able to utilize 9 years of those 20-year patent, which for pharmaceutical companies is obviously not great, because there's always competitors, there's always someone that is trying to get ahead of time, which means that by the time you get to the 20th year mark, there will always and already be someone that is completely ready with a full fund, crazy new ideas, crazy great ideas, that will be there ready to tackle whatever it is that you've already spent 11 years, X amount of millions to build, you bring to market. You only got profit and revenue from for 9 years. And now there's someone that is able to essentially get your research, do something completely different, maybe better or not, but different from what you did, and utilize and make profits from, I'm not going to say day one, because you still need things to be approved, or you should need to get things approved to be able to market them. But it's definitely faster for the ones that come after.
So you don't need to prove there are no side effects or
You do.
anything
You
again.
do. You
Oh, you
do.
still do. Okay.
You do.
Again,
You do. It's
what,
just,
when you're copying.
yeah, because
Okay.
you can really copy, like, for example, take GLP, the Ozempic of this world. You had Ozempic, and now you have Ozempic, Wegovy, you have Mounjaro, you have, I don't know how many one. You still need to prove safety, because the active substances within the injection are different. So they might have or cause different reactions to people. Even the same piece of Ozempic or Wegovy or Mounjaro, it might still cause different effects on different people because our bodies are completely different from one another. It will probably have a completely different effect on me than it would have on you, for example. I mean, I'm a woman, you're a man, you're probably much taller than I am, I'm assuming. So body composition wise, everything would have different results. So definitely still need to test and prove safety and efficacy. But in a way, you already have half of your job done.
And from perceptions of what the life of being a founder was going to be like what you like thought about this when discussing this with your co-founders and kind of like putting things up and like, oh, this is something that we should do, to now running this for 2 years. Have your perceptions come true? Has anything changed in the way you've kind of evaluated how difficult this journey is?
Oof. Yes. And for context, there's four co-founders. One of them is our CEO. Then I'm the CSO. And then we have the CTO and the CPO. And for full transparency as well, and you already know this, we've spoken before, the CEO, Pedro, is my husband. And Pedro had already founded a company before, a CRO, which is a clinical research organization that is essentially a service provider for outsourcing services for pharmaceutical companies to conduct their studies. So he already had that experience of building a company, having to deal with the funding, having to deal with finding clients, having to deal with managing a company. I hadn't. So this was a stone cold experience for me. I'm very thankful for his existence and his prior experience because he was definitely able to guide us a lot. And when I say us, like myself and two of my other co-founders, but it wasn't at all what I was expecting. But to be quite fair, I'm not sure I knew what to expect from it in a way. So but it was definitely an amazing experience and it still is. And from the day we started or we decided to start the company to today, we've definitely hit some roadblocks. We've definitely had to change the way we were focusing or what we were focusing in and just redirect or take 3 steps back to be able to actually maybe take one or two or three or four forward. So it's definitely a different journey than what I had imagined in the very beginning when we set up to do this.
Yeah. And if you look back at your life as a younger Clara, back in school, university years, do you notice moments and challenges that kind of prepared you for this part of the journey?
That's a great question. I would think that so my goal in life when I was a little girl was to be a doctor. My mom was a surgeon. She was a chief of surgery at our hometown hospital. And I always looked up to her and thought, my God, I want to be her like when I grow up. And just to stress that my mom got to the peak of her career when women in medicine were still maybe a novelty. My mom finished her degree, so she graduated med school in the 70s. So just to give a context on why it's so wow for me, and it always was. Unfortunately, I had some health situations when I was a young girl, and I focused on my health and on getting better. And I completely left focus on school, studies, anything like that. And I missed my chance to get into med school. And I thought my life was going to be over. And that was a roadblock. That was a hard thing for me in my life that I obviously overcome. And I do think that that hard thing that for a 18-year-old Clara was the end of her world definitely gave me some hard skin in terms of life doesn't always happen as you had imagined. Yes, I was a straight A student. Yes, I was a great student. Yes, I had an amazing sense of person in terms of I have this feeling. I have this, like when there's something inside you that you would be a great doctor, but you have to still accomplish a certain amount of parameters to be able to get into that. So definitely that created some hard skin. And we also mentioned before when we spoke, um, I think losses in life always prepare you to the unknown, to novelty situations, especially when they're unpredictable and they happen from one day to another. And we spoke about this regarding Pedro's father situation, for example,
Yeah.
which is actually why we built Biorce. So yeah, I mean, a couple of examples, one a little bit more chilled than the other in a way.
Yeah. And can you tell us maybe, if it's okay to be a little vulnerable today, about that experience with Pedro's father and how that kind of served as a inspiration to try and affect the industry?
Yeah, of course, happy to. I mean, it became our mission, so I'm very proud to speak of it, and I know Pedro doesn't and wouldn't mind. So Pedro's dad was diagnosed with melanoma, unresectable melanoma, stage 4, in July 2021. He at the time was in Colombia, and he went to his dermatologist, who told him, "Hey, let me call my oncologist buddy." And we were in London at the time living, and all of a sudden we got a call from his dad saying, "Hey, I just been diagnosed with this. Doctor said that I have 3 months to live." And we were just like completely, what? What do you mean? Like, this is completely ridiculous, like makes zero sense, etc., etc. Um, we already both worked in the industry, obviously. This was 4 years ago. Uh, so we started reaching out to all of the connections we had, everyone that we knew in the oncology space. We were able eventually to find a study that was testing a new combination of drugs, immunotherapy with radiation, but a new type of immunotherapy that was very specific. If you had a specific marker, which was the BRAF, Jesus BRAF marker, and they weren't recruiting or including patients in Colombia. At the time, we were not able to bring him to Portugal or to Spain, and we are originally from Portugal, hence the mention to Portugal. So we were okay. I mean, what do we do, And with a lot of connections and a lot of requests and a lot of favors and a lot of everything, we were able to get his dad on the study under under compassionate use. However, the thing about compassionate use is that yes, it's released for the use of patients that need it, should efficacy and safety be already proven, but you still have to pay for the treatment. The treatment was about $15,000 a month, and as you can imagine, that is extremely hard to support. So at the time, we went on TV. We even set up a GoFundMe situation. Eventually we got to it, and he was able to come to Portugal. And those 3 months that were actually given in July, he surpassed them beautifully. He did pass away in August 2022, but we still had over a year with him, and we were able to bring him to Portugal. We were able to get him well, get him to a physical, mental state that he could almost have a normal life. And those months that we were able to get from the treatment provided time for us to say goodbye, provided time for him to come back to Portugal, to see his parents, to see the people he loved, to spend time with the people he loved, to eat amazing Portuguese food. And after everything, we kind of paused in life and thought, for a normal person that wouldn't have had all of these connections and
Yeah.
wouldn't have known all of these short paths that could have been taken, and for good or worse, wouldn't have had the money to cover for his treatment for the amount of time that we had to cover for his treatment before we could bring him to Portugal and have the Portuguese government cover it as a standard of care, this wouldn't have been possible. Why? Because this study took a ridiculous amount of years to be conducted, because the treatment was not released or available for patients that actually needed them. So at the time, and working in the industry, we thought, okay, how can we solve this? Like, how can we make it better for people like that? And I say people like that because that when we create Biorce to be one product, to be a product that would be able to elevate, automate, and ease the life of people that life protocols for a living. That instead of taking 6 to 10 to 18 months to write a protocol, have it approved by FDA or EMA, and actually start conducting it, should it be phase one or whichever other phase in the clinical space, it should only take like a month, 2 months. Because if you're able to do this, then you're already cutting time. Then if you're able to replicate this, then you're doing all of this, you know? And then we started the company. We started doing case studies and use cases, and then we developed the first product, or the first MVP, let's call it, because the first product was really just a black terminal. Um, and the patient that we always use for the case studies was the case study of Pedro's dad. So patient zero was that.
Yeah.
And for a while we used it, and then I think that saying it was out of respect is a little weird, but it was out of not wanting to also pass the message and pass the image that we would be using this experience for forever. So eventually we dropped it, but the experience and what we had to go through with Pedro's dad led into the creation of Biorce, into the mission of wanting to be better, wanting to do better, and wanting to be able to provide to all people around the world, regardless of how they live, regardless of possessions, regardless of race, of gender, of whatever it is. Just because you're a patient and you have this diagnosis, you should have access to treatment for whatever you need on a fast pace, not on an 11 plus year timeline. So that's essentially why I created that.
What I notice is a lot of people kind of spend a lot of time trying to find the motivation, like trying to uncover what it is that kind of brings the fire in them. And whenever we get older and we are faced with the passing of like people who are dear to us, we kind of start realizing that life is finite. Has this kind of caused you to reevaluate kind of the sense of life, the meaning of life, and like your motivations, your trajectories? How do you want to live the life?
I wouldn't say so. I would say that yes, it definitely gave us a purpose or a very strong reason why we wanted to do what we were doing and are doing, which I guess that for some people, they, like you were saying, like it takes time, and sometimes they never find the fire in life to be able to, like, what makes me get out of bed. We have that, and it was really easy for us. Pedro is my husband. He wasn't at the time yet, but Pedro's my husband. So I shared a lot of that pain and that grief. I loved his dad. And our other two co-founders were already very close friends to both of us. So they shared first person also that pain. And everyone else that eventually joined the company, and we are currently now 50 something, 52, I think. It's easy for them because it's not only that, it's there's always someone, there's, like you were saying, there's always someone you care about, you love, that is going through something, that has gone through something. So it's a very relatable mission that I think gets the fire going in people. But I wouldn't say that it changed how I see life or how we see life. I can only speak for myself. But I don't do things quicker because I've seen people part around me. I don't do things irrationally. I just make sure that whatever I do, it has a meaning and it has a sense to it, you know? So it's a yes and no kind of answer.
And with motivation, there are days where you wake up and you just don't feel like doing anything. And you feel like today is just not a good day. And you think maybe I'll just, put a pause for today and then I'll pick things up tomorrow. But when you're one of the co-founders, you don't have that privilege anymore. You have people working for you. You have meetings that are set for today. In terms of like your experience, how often do you have those days? And what is the frame of mind that you put in place to help you put yourself up and just, get on with it?
Oh, wow. uh, it depends on the stage we are at as a company. I definitely have more of those days when it's stressful times, like when we're raising or preparing for to raise, just because very stressful times. Um, so I probably say that, but then, like you said, like we have added responsibility when you're co-founder, when you're C-suite, when the mission is something that is very personal to you. So when you have all of this, the days are still there, but sometimes it's just like, okay, buckle up, buttercup. It's one of those things where you don't have a choice anymore to do that because people are counting on you. And I mean, I speak against myself because I'll come clean. I had to reschedule our our podcast session because, and it was actually not because of work. It was because of a personal situation. Those happen. I might not want to get out of bed because I'm too stressed at work, because there's a lot to do, because there's something going on in my personal life. But, and I also like to touch this point, is that I'm very lucky to have my husband as one of my co founders because we get to share the pain
Yeah.
or we get to share the hype. I guess that in the end, I have fewer days of those than I would say some of the rest of co-founders in the world, because I have someone to share that pain with that is literally there every single day. So yeah.
And I know that a lot of founders, when they come back home to their other halves, and they're broken, they've been fundraising, they've heard 30 investors tell them no on that day, and they're just anxious, worried, like questioning themselves and the whole mission, the time and energy that they've spent. And when the spouse does not understand the realities of what being a founder is, it's usually hard to kind of find the understanding in the house. With both of you being co-founders of the same startup, could you tell us about like what you've noticed are the pros and cons of working on something together? What are the good sides and what are maybe the downsides too?
Uh, I'll be very controversial, and I to say that I don't think there's actually cons to it, because to be fair, the only con that I see is I kind of lost the ability to speak to my husband about a lot that is outside of work. And the reason why I say that's not exactly a con for me is because we both absolutely love what we do. We are both completely passionate about what we were able to create, about the company, about the mission, about where we going next, and how far we've already come. So it's not really a con to me.
Yeah.
To the people around us, I usually get that. I usually get, oh my God, like, don't you ever get tired of only speaking business with Pedro? I'm like, no, actually. Um, no, but I mean, like you were saying, he understands. We share the stress, we share the hypes, we share the, oh my God, we just raised money, or oh my God, like this client is being a pain and I cannot fix this for the life of me. We share all of those things, but also like he's a CEO, I'm CSO, so we have different functions. Yes, they cross, and we do speak during the day. There are days that I don't speak with him, other than the point where we both get home. But we still have things to share with each other that are not of common knowledge. You know, like I'm guessing that you get home and you tell your better half that, hey, this happened, or hey, I'm frustrated, or I'm happy, or whatever the feeling you were feeling because X, Y, and Z happened to me today. And that will still be different than what Pedro experiences during his day. Because yes, we share a company, yes, we share a working space, we work on the same office, but we still have different functions. We are not even like in the same department. It's not like we're both tech people or we're both very product oriented people and we have to deal with each other like 24/7, or 8 by 8, working hour state. But you know, like we still have news to tell each other, and we
Yeah.
still have, I still have things that I go to Pedro and say, hey, I had this idea, or I was speaking with my team about this. What's your 2 cents on it? Same way that he still tells me, hey, I had this really hard day because I was speaking with X, Y, and Z person. The conversations did not go as I was expecting them to go, or X, Y, you know? So I don't see a lot of cons. I actually don't see cons because yes, we work together. Yes, we share a company together, but we
Yeah.
still have different functions. So we're still able to have that normal kind of conversation at the end of the day where we just share what happened.
And with, building a co-founding relationship is very similar to building like the marriage kind of relationship. You have to kind of know the person because you're in this for a long run, hopefully until the very end, be it an exit or sale or deciding to stop the company. And you kind of want to know that, you can behave in an argument where you will respect each other. How have you and your co-founders kind of navigated that space in order to know, okay, we're a good fit. We're not gonna, I don't know, after each shouting on each other, we'll get to the good idea and thank each other and be respectful. Like, were there any times where you're like, this is what makes us a really good team?
100%. We actually, and I'll share a story if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course.
Um, we are in hyper growth, as I think it's easy to understand, and we were hiring a chief of staff, and we found the perfect fit. And we invited this person to come to the office to get to know us, so that we could also like introduce ourselves individually, and she could actually get a sense of this. So, and I've already said she, so might as well keep going on it. So she visited, and that was literally one of the first questions she asked. Was like, so you're married to him, and you're married to her, and the other two founders you're best friends with. So how am I going to fit here, and how am I actually going to be able to manage this already very like in-rooted relationships here?
You can marry this guy or that guy. There's the choice. Don't touch Pedro.
That would have been a great plan, you know. She's already married, happily married with kids, but that would have been a great plan B. But it was really easy to answer, and we then asked all of the rest of the management team to come and to freely speak with her, and we completely left the room and went our ways and our lives. And when we came back, she was like, "Oh my God, I'm so chilled and so confident now because these guys really like calmed me in terms of how the dynamic works." And I think that from the very beginning, we had these lines put in place where we each have a responsibility, and then we have a responsibility for each other or for one another. I have a responsibility towards my CTO of getting the product properly reviewed and properly validated in order for my CTO to be able to have his responsibility done towards our CPO of having the product actually done for them to be able to design it. And we all have a joint responsibility to Pedro, which is our CEO, and kind of goes after us when you're not doing stuff. But we've always had this dynamic, and I'm not sure I can put into words how it actually works. But yes, we've gotten into arguments. Yes, we've gotten into I don't agree with you, and let's agree to disagree, because I'm not going to change my mind. Or no, this does not work. No, this blah blah blah. And afterwards, we would just go to dinner like nothing. So we live with the work in a way. I think that because they're still unmarried, they married the company. But we've always had this really good dynamic. And I think that also comes from having a previous relationship with all of them. I've known our CPO for over 10 years and going on 10 years on our CTO. And it comes from a place of being comfortable with them, of being able to tell them or to tell them off, to be fair, or for them to tell me off because I failed the deadline, because I didn't do something that it was meant to be done in a certain way that I didn't understand or whatever. But it comes from a place of comfort to be able to be honest and still know that afterwards we're still friends.
Yeah.
So there's Pedro the CEO, there's Pedro the husband, and there's Pedro the friend for the rest of them, and also for me, obviously. And there's the CTO, the CPO, the CSO, and then there's the group of friends. And don't take me wrong, we take any and all opportunities to speak about work. But again, that comes from loving and really understanding the impact that our work might bring to an enormous industry.
Yeah.
But, and I know I'm not really answering your question in a proper way, but it's really because I don't know how to put in words or how to properly describe how we built this dynamic. I've never worked with the CTO or CPO before. I did work with Pedro before, but Pedro was senior to me, and I did respond not to him directly, but to someone that was under him in the hierarchy of the company. And even then, like, it worked very well, and we always understood the dynamic in terms of there's work and there's home. But at that time, it wasn't our company. We didn't have this very big connection. So yes, we would still speak about work for the same reasons. Like, we were so far apart in the company that I still had a lot of news and a lot of things to share with Pedro, and same thing for him. But having never worked with CPO and CTO, and I'm just going to put names to because it's really weird. It is Jose, Jose CTO, Diogo CPO. I've never worked with them, but I've been friends with them for so long that I just have this comfortness of, hey, you need to do this X, Y, and Z ways, and from A to Z, and then we can speak again. Same way that they are comfortable enough to say, hey, you effed up on X task that I asked you a week ago and I still don't have it, or whatever you sent is incomplete. I'm like, oh my God, like, what is incomplete? And we just have that openness to sit together and resolve issues. And I do think that actually the previous relationship we all had together made it easier in a way.
Because it's a very controversial topic. Because my father would always tell me, like, if you have an opportunity to build business, or to choose between business and friendship, choose friendship, and you'll always find people to do business with. And there are people who say, like, building things with your friends is the best thing that you can do because you know somebody you can trust. And there are other people who are like, never build things with friends because, that might ruin the friendship. And I think the question that I want to get to kind of better understand the dynamics is what do you think, how would you kind of generalize the culture that you have at Biorce? What kind of things do you maybe it's not official, maybe it's not on a piece of paper, but how do you feel about, like, when you hire new people and you're like, this is the kind of like behavior that we expect because that's the culture that we've set, like the four co-founders. How would you describe that culture?
I can almost cheat on this question because we actually just set up our values
Yeah.
to kind of integrate into the hiring process and everything else. Because, yes, we've done a great job so far on hiring people that fit amazingly on the culture. And the culture that we are building is an unspoken family situation where it's not family, but you do make friends within the company and we all respect each other. We all know each other's places and each other's responsibilities, but we also all understand the long term mission, the long term goal. And I think that was and still is a very important part of our hiring processes is understanding apart from your capabilities, if you're a tech person, a part of how good of an engineer are you, or how good of a scientist are you, or how good of a designer, whatever. It's also understanding who's behind that person, like who's the person, like what do you like to do, where do you see yourself in 5 years, like that very usual question in interviews. But on a personal level, like, do you have a girlfriend, do you have a partner, do you intend to get married, like do you want kids, what do you feel about kids, what do you feel about animals, what's your favorite animal, what do you like to do in your free time, like almost as speed dating of a sort on how to make friends, but essentially you're not hiring friends, you're just hiring people that have the same cultural fit as all of us. I do believe that we built a Biorce family in a way that we all have the same values as people. We all have not the same opinions, not the same political arrangements or directions, but we are all able to discuss whatever topic it is in a healthy, respectful way. And I think that's extremely important to be a person in general, but to have people that you work with, like we have so many people that started working in the company, became friends, and now like they're inseparable. Or people that came to the company were very introverts, for example, and actually started doing stuff in the Biorce clubs that we now have a few. I probably, if I look out in the sea, I probably have one of the clubs diving into the sea, because now they created this thing where once a week during winter we're gonna run to the sea and just dive in because it's good for you. It's good for your body with all of the cold plunge situation. So it's the culture we're trying to raise with like the overall values of excellence, ownership, and purpose, because that's all connected with one main goal, which is our ambition to be able to do better for the industry and for people.
What I've always like as a founder have like asked myself the question faced with is when I was just starting building companies back in 2014, I would always go like, "Oh, I'm building a family. We're a family here," and I was thinking that would get people together and we would just go. And as we started to grow, I was faced with situations where like the company was growing, but certain like people in certain functions weren't, and there are people who were underperforming. And like from a business perspective, like I knew I had to replace them. Like what another friend of mine told me, like everybody knows who's the weakest player on the team is, like like the whole team knows. And when we had to make the decisions on firing, like that's when the whole like you don't fire family members, you know.
That's actually one of the questions that the chief of staff asked Pedro was, would you be able to fire Clara if needed? The answer was yes, because once again, we cannot jeopardize the overall mission that we're trying to accomplish that is so much bigger than one individual for that said individual. We simply cannot. And I think that, and Pedro is actually the first person to say this, which is actually very curious. And the first time he told me this, I was like, what? He's the first guy to say, one day I will not be the right person to be the CEO of this company. And when that day comes, I'm happy to be replaced because I want the best, what's best for the company. And if it comes to the point where I'm not the best and our board members, our investors, I am happy to be replaced. And I was like, what? Why wouldn't you just try to be better? And it's like, it gets to the point where it's impossible. And with time, I've come to agree with him where it gets to a point where more experience is needed, where more capability of leading with, dealing with different types of people in the industries, mainly obviously speaking from my part,
Yeah.
is needed. So we will get to a point where that might happen. And that's actually fun that you raised that point because that was actually one of the questions that the new chief of staff asked during our meeting was, would you be able to fire Clara? Like, she's your wife. Would you be able to fire Diogo or José? They were best men at your wedding.
Yeah.
They're best friends. Like, would you be able to? And the answer has to be yes, because yes, we do love the people we work with. And that's the reason why Pedro hates when I say we created a family, because it can lead to that feeling of comfort. But when people get too comfortable and people start underperforming because of just comfortness, then either you shake them up and coconuts start fall, or you have to do something else, and you cannot jeopardize the entire company for one rotten member of the family in this case.
And maybe to your point, I think when you talk about like you get to the level where more skills are required, and what I've noticed is oftentimes it's not just only the skills. Like some people love the process of building the company up, like to find the product market fit, get the initial funding, get the team together. And then when they come to the point where it's like, okay, now we need to put in processes. How do we like create extrinsic motivations? How we do this and that? Then they're like, oh, now I'm in a loop. Now I'm in a cage. I don't like this. Give me something new, like a new product, a new direction. So they usually hire somebody from the outside to do that. Because I believe like everybody should be doing something that they love and that the company is benefiting from the most. And if you get to the point where it's not exactly what you love, there's always other like 8 billion people building, like some of them, a lot of them are building companies where like you can utilize that as well. And I can see like it's so great that these questions are getting asked in the companies, and that you've created a culture where it's okay to ask these kind of questions. Because so many like startups break because they couldn't talk about these things early on. And when it all builds up, and in 4 years' time you have that conversation, and it's like, ooh, people had different ideas.
Yeah, taboos, right?
Yeah. And you've on the previous conversation you've mentioned a couple of stories during your fundraising, which just to kind of show the founders listening to this and watching this, that the
Everything can
journey,
happen.
anything can happen, and it's part of the job. It's part of your life as a founder to be prepared and expect these things and know how to react them to move forward. Could you tell us about your pre-seed fundraising experience?
Yes, of course I can. It was a very fun situation. Obviously not, but for pre-seed, we had two co-leads of the round, and then we had some smaller investors, followers, and we were meant to sign everything on a Thursday, and then we were going to fly to Germany to go to Oktoberfest because one of our co-lead investors is German, and they had invited us to, hey, come to Oktoberfest. We always have like a table at one of the tents, and it would be really fun. You've never come, so we always do this thing where we put in like the full portfolio together. Come and celebrate. It's even amazing because it's the day after we sign. Like, okay, amazing, let's go. So we get to the airport and Pedro gets a call. I was like, oh, give me a second. I really need to get this. It's X person. And I was like, oh, okay, probably asking details to get whatever signed. And Pedro gets out of the call, looks at me and said, we're effed. This guy just decided to drop. And I'm like, what?
And
It's like,
what part was he like of the overall pre-seed
it was,
investment
it
that you
was a
wanted?
follower. It was
Okay.
a follower investor. Um, it was a follower. It wasn't one of those that have like the smaller pieces of the pie. So it was a respectful piece of the investment round. And I looked at Pedro and I remember like, what? We're literally at the airport, an hour and a half probably away from boarding, going to Germany to celebrate something that is meant to be signed in a couple hours. And this guy calls you and says that he wants to drop. He provided his reasons, his rationale. That investor had come from he came. I can say he because it's investor. Investor is a male adjective. Um, he, who may or not be a male, had came highly recommended by other investment funds, by other VCs. And I remember thinking, what the hell is happening? Like, is this a normality in this world? And I was freaking out, and Pedro was like, okay, like we need to find a way. And immediately, like, we passed through security. We were almost kicked out of the airport because security was getting pissed at us because we were both on our phones trying to fix the situation. And security guy was like, you cannot be on your phone. And we were like, there's nothing saying that you cannot be on our phone. We're still like 20 people away of actually going through the machine. Yeah, no, but you cannot be on your phone. And I'm like, okay, amazing, but I really need to be on my phone right now. So we kind of hit ourselves like, hi. We continued to have our calls, and then we saw the security guy come back, and like, okay, let's not get into trouble. We passed security, and then from the point that we passed security to the point that we boarded the plane, we called all of our investors. We called first and foremost our lead investors. We spoke about what happened, and one of our lead investors said, "Okay, we'll cover for that investor's part." And this is also to bring awareness for how important it is to pick your investors and not just take anyone's money just because. Just because it's money, don't take it. It's always important to see like what's the importance, what's the relevance, what's the hands-on that that investor will have, what's the trust you'll be able to have with them, and what's the kind of relationship you will want and you will feel right now before even signing the funding agreement, that you want to have with them in a year's time, because in a year's time you might be raising another round. Will you want them to have pro rata, like will you go to them to speak about the potential new round? Will they be the right person to support you with the raise of a new round? Like all of these things. And we were very, very lucky, and we are very thankful for both these lead investors, co-lead investors. Both of them gave us enormous support. They also kind of put that investor in the blacklist in terms of like, what the hell? And mind you, like this was the morning of,
Yeah.
and it was mind blowing to me how first time founder Pedro had already had this experience, and I think it was easier for him to deal with the emotions, to deal with the panic itself,
Yeah.
because it is panic, it's absolute panic. It was my head
We
was
we're
going on
thinking
red.
like, okay, this one dropped, maybe another one's gonna drop now. Maybe it's a standard thing that everybody drops last minute.
Yeah, but like, at that point in time, we already had all of the agreements closed, all of the percentages, all of like, we had the final amount because,
Yeah.
and as you know, I don't have to explain this, but we had the set amount for the round,
Yeah.
which if it gets lower, it implicates on our valuation.
Yeah.
It's a snowball. So Pedro was composed and poised, and I was like, what? I was going like I was this close to going on rampage and just losing my mind. And people were like, "Don't worry, like we'll be able to go around it," and we did. And this was last year, September last year. And after that, we raised a seed round, which thankfully went very smoothly with no surprises. But yeah, I mean, it really opened my eyes in terms because sometimes like we were fortunate to have a lot of investors and to be able to pick and select the ones that we actually wanted, and not that we didn't want to work with the rest, but the ones that would be able to bring added value
Yeah.
into the board and into the overall round. And we had chosen that investor over someone else, and obviously that was a huge mistake, but at the same time it was eye-opening for me to understand that money, just because it's money, it's not worth it. Sometimes it's better for you to have fewer investors, be able to negotiate your round, be able to negotiate your valuation. Instead of closing the round now, close the round in a month if you're able to. Obviously, you might not have runway for it, but in an ideal world, pardon, then having to rush to pick investors that might be a headache
Yeah.
a year down the line. And yeah, I mean that's what happened. We had this very fun situation. We were able to fix it or find a way to fix it before we boarded the plane. By the time we landed in Munich, situation was with the lawyers to redact papers, to rewrite papers. And by the time next day that we got to Oktoberfest, we had everything signed and we were able to celebrate. And I do realize that there might and there will be a lot of experiences that will probably not have this happy ending with other founders and other rounds being raised. And that's really unfortunate. And that really only tells us founders and should tell investors how important it is to pick the right people to work with from both sides as well. And yeah, so that was a
And
fun
it's
one.
just so easy to go for the first money that you get offered. Because if we think back to when we were young, let's say like in our like early 20s, and you're just working on something first, and you have a lot of pressure from your friends, from your parents who are like, get a job, do this, get something stable. And you're like, no, I'm going to risk it. This is going to work. And then you start fundraising. And this is your first time, you're young, you're pitching, like you have your rainbow glasses on, you're saying like, oh, this is going to be a unicorn in 2 years. And after a while, you kind of arrange your pitch deck, and one of the investors says like, okay, I'm ready to do like run with you. And most people just say, okay, let's do it. Like like they're giving money. I have a chance to like tell everyone like, hey, look, somebody believed in me. I've raised some money. How would you maybe give some advice or share that experience of like what are the red flags that those founders should be looking at when picking the investor to go with? And what is the value add that you were talking about that you were looking for in investors to kind of prioritize them?
The red flags are actually really hard to get because I can tell you from that experience, we did not see one red flag, like one. Before that happened, before that telephone call, we did not see or experience any red flag from anyone in that investors team. So it was really like, it was a shock. We were like, haha, April's Fools in September. But no, it was an actual thing. And the red flags are really hard to find, but I would say like try to imagine what kind of support you would want from the investors you're getting, what kind of knowledge, and that also goes to the other parts of your question in terms of the added value, which is the knowledge. Like, Do they have more companies in my space in their portfolio? Are they able to help with advisors, for example? If not, like, are they themselves able to provide me with practical, real world advice should I need it? Will they be people that will listen to me if I come to a point in the company, even if I still have a lot of runway? But for moving from just paying the fund back to a unicorn, I should raise X. Will they listen to me, or will they just focus on getting their money back and just pay the entire fund? So it's like, get investors that believe in you, rather that believe in you and in your mission, rather than just believing you can make it. Because believing in you can making it, and if you have a good product and you have the market for it, it's really hard not to make it, to be fair. Like, it's, you can make it a little less and you can make it a lot more, but you will make something out of it. If you have a good product and there's market for it, if it's a good product fit, you'll have something. So it's easy to believe in you, but it's different to believe in you and actually believing the product and what it can be, not what it is right now. And that goes like towards the added value. It was really important for us to get people that had their heads in the right mind, that had their hearts in the right mind, that were able to help us, support us with questions, with moving within the space. Because when you like, we're raising in a medtech space, in a very traditional industry, like pharmaceutical industry is one of the most traditional ones in the world. They like to do this like this, and for them to move from this to this, it might take a lot of time. So will they be able to help us navigate the industry, and will they have that long-term vision to understand what it will take or what it might take to go from here to here? Not without asking questions. I want those questions. Like, I want all of those questions, because those are the moments where, in discussing, in brainstorming, you actually get to the point where I'm like, oh, eureka, like that makes so much sense. Like, why haven't I thought before? Well, that's why they exist, right? And I'm speaking against one of our co-investors, because we literally went from first contact to term sheet in like a week, 8 days, I think, 7, 8 days. But also go with your gut feeling. There's something about it that when you speak with them, it might or might not make sense. It might tell you from the start that they will be a good fit, that they will be able to help you, and you are able to get that from the way they speak with you during their DD. At least that's been my experience. Like, during DDs, they're always very either formal or informal, or they can be informal while still asking the right question. If they're asking the right questions with me, I know they'll ask the right questions with anyone else. And when it's just, I'm asking questions because I want to do my DD to understand if you're worthy of my money. It's completely different from, I'm going to do my DD to see if we're a good fit to work together for the next X amount of years. Because, like you were saying, like, when you set up a company, you don't set up something. You don't set it up to be something of, oh yeah, let's do this for a year and then next year I'll change business. Or, I mean, you can. There's nothing wrong with it, but
Investors might not like that.
it's one of those things where I think investors might think as talent acquisition people in that way, where you might be like a serial employee slash a serial funder. And it's great to be a serial funder when there's mission, there's vision, there's purpose behind whatever it is that you're funding, and you continue to fund because, hey, you did great, you did so great that you exited, and now you're building something new because you just don't like to rest and to chill. So you continue to do it, and you continue to bring something new and good to the world. And that's different. But that's completely different from creating something and then, oh yeah, it didn't work. What's new? Like, what's next? Um, but it's really hard. And we were very lucky. We are still very lucky. We were very lucky with our series. Well, seed, with our seed round, with our pre-seed round as well. We have great investors, and they provide support. They're open. They listen. They're also listened. Just in case someone wondering, we also listen a lot. And again, they're investors and they've been working in the space for a while, so we don't know anything, everything. There's nothing wrong in discussing and brainstorming. The best ideas come from discussions, right?
And what are you personally most excited about for the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I would be a liar if I would say that I'm not incredibly excited to see how what we're doing will, in a way, implode the industry from the within, like from the inside. Sorry. Because like I've been working in industries for so long, and I've seen and went through so many pains. I've seen so many studies go wrong because someone took a wrong turn and there was no one else to check. uh, maybe right, not left. um, like I've seen so many things happen, and I've also experienced them with Pedro's dad. And not only, I've had friends and friends of friends that reached out because someone in their family, their kids, whoever, had an orphan disease that needed help, and can we help? And I'm so excited for the moment where the industry just refers to us as the standard of quality and of automation for those exact things, like I cannot wait for the moment where I'm like, ha, my God, like 5 years ago, this would have taken me a week to do, and I did it in 20 minutes. Um, and I'm excited for what that means for, like, in practicality, what all of this fastness, all of this automation, all of this changing of scenery in the industry, what does this mean to do research, and what does it mean to patients? Because that's really what we want, right? Is that a patient, instead of having to wait 11 years to even see something in the market and still having to pay a ton of money for it, is able to get it in 6 years and maybe even before. Because obviously, if you are a pharma company and you're set to have an enormous profit on it, I mean, the less you spend to build something, the less
Yeah.
you will charge for it, because you don't have to have a huge margin for profit. Like, sometimes when we speak with people, sometimes people have a hard time understanding. I'm like, how? Like, okay, so let's do this. If it takes me $20 to build this really big Apple charger, I'll have to sell it for 80. I think it's even more expensive now. If it only takes me $5 to build it, then I can only charge $10 and still have more or less the same, well, $12, the same percentage in profit.
Yeah.
And $12 is affordable for
A lot more people.
probably a lot more people. And especially in the US, with all of the insurance situations that we see, very unfortunate that
Yeah.
a lot of people, unfortunately, do not have access to proper treatments, to proper healthcare. It's exciting to be working on something that can be a solution for not only one problem, but several problems. And the bigger it gets, the more problems it will solve. And even if it's not like, if you don't go from 100 problems to a million problems, even if it's just like from 100 to 500, those 500 will probably be much bigger problems. And I'm fine with that. Because if I can get to other families what we were able to get Pedro's dad, which was 15 more months of life to come back to Portugal to say bye, to spend time with us, to meet our, well, now he's not a puppy, but our puppy dog that we had at the time, to be able to celebrate another birthday. I mean, who in their right minds would say no, you know?
Yeah.
So that's what gets me really excited. And that's what gets me out of bed in those days that we were speaking before, that I
Yeah.
really, really wished that I could just stay a little bit longer. That's it. It's just like in 10 years, I want to look back, and I might not even be involved with Biorce anymore, but I would love to just hear someone say, oh, yeah, I'm going to use Biorce to QA my entire study before submitting it.
Yeah.
And, you know, like reading about it and seeing the world impact that we're working to get.
And we all want to live to like 120, 130. And we all
Well,
think
I mean,
it will take some amount of time. And hopefully with Biorce, that time comes quicker. And with other startups like Alpha,
no
like
promises. Yes, well, you have a
DeepMind,
lot of stories
AlphaFold.
working on that.
Yeah.
100%. You have a lot of stories working on getting to 500. Not 500, but 120
I
still
think
helping.
120 is going to be enough.
I agree. Past 120, you might get to the point like, those days where I wanted to sleep a little bit later,
Yeah.
maybe they came.
I think Mars
Yeah.
is going to be the next level. After 120, you can just go to Mars and start anew and just have another 200 years. Well, Clark, I want to thank you so much for coming to the show and bringing your most real and authentic self, and so many stories that are going to be incredibly useful to all of the listeners. I want to wish you from the podcast all of the best for Biorce. We'll be rooting for you and following your progress. And yeah, thank you for taking
Thank
the
you.
time.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Once again, it was an absolute pleasure. I know that we were more giggling than serious, but I think that it's sometimes also needed. And I do hope that some of these might be helpful for a lot of people there, and helpful and curious for some founders. So again, thank you very much. I'll be definitely continue to keep a close eye on the podcast and everything that you do. So thank you so much, Emily. It was a real pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Clara.